Welcome to Heart Powered Conversations. Today, my guest is Lyndsey Schneider. She's the owner of the Meditation Mama company and the host of Starseed Parenting Podcast. Welcome, Lyndsey. I'm so excited to have you here to have this empowering conversation about all things Starseed children, meditation, and all kinds of magic that might roll our way as we start this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you, Kat. I'm so excited to be here.
So we can start with your story that I think a lot of people are going to find really inspiring, or we can jump right into the question that I ask my guests. What does it mean to you to live from the heart? And what does it mean in this case, since parenting is our subject, what does it mean to you to be someone who parents from the heart, from this heart-centered, heart-powered way? Should we start with that, or do you want to tell your story?
Well, it's all interconnected, so we can start there. So for me, parenting from the heart is parenting from my soul. It means being super connected to my intuition and leaning into my intuition to decide what my children need versus what everyone else is doing, because often it's very different from the norm. So it's just having that connection with my soul is what it means for me. And I'll tell you my story in a nutshell. So I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, beautiful little star seeds. And my first year of parenting, my son was really very much an initiation for me because I had postpartum anxiety and I became super disconnected from my intuition. I was outsourcing every answer you could think of. I was on Google at all hours of the night trying to figure things out. And I also felt like I was going a bit crazy because I was having just horrible dreams and so much anxiety. I didn't want to drive with him anywhere unless it was the doctor's office. I was just alone in my house. And I had told myself, this is my job now. I had quit my job. I'm a stay-at-home mom. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to be the best stay-at-home mom that you've ever seen. And no one needs to help me because I'm Superwoman. I can do it all myself. So by the end of that year, just from being so disconnected from my intuition, my own body needs, my own self-care, I completely burned out and I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, the autoimmune condition. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. And that was the beginning of everything shifting and changing. So after that, I realized if I'm going to be this mother that I want to be, I have to take care of myself. And I also need to reconnect to my body and my soul, my intuition, to know what I need as well as my child. And so this just started this whole journey of shadow work and really started my awakening process and unpeeling the layers and peeling back the conditioning of why I was feeling the way I was feeling and all of it. And at a certain point, I had my second child and I knew I wanted to go back to work. Still wasn't sure what I was meant to do, but I knew I was meant to be in service to women, specifically mothers. So I went back to work as a postpartum doula because I didn't want anyone to ever feel the way I did. I didn't want them to feel isolated and alone, and I wanted them to tap into their intuition and essentially learn from me versus hearing what everyone else has to say. And that was beautiful, but it didn't feel fully resonant. It didn't feel fully like what I was meant to do. And I got pregnant with my third very quickly. So I did that for a year and then I had my third child. And after Coco, I knew there was something to do for women and I couldn't figure it out. And I became a big meditator. I had postpartum anxiety again. And I said, I'm going to kick this and I'm going to do it in the healthiest, most loving way possible. And so I meditated every single day, multiple times a day. I had a nanny help me with the kids. I was just really taking care of myself. And I became obsessed with meditation. And from that was born this desire to create meditations for mothers and for anyone else who needed to heal. And so I began creating meditations for other people and just channeling and really just creating these transmissions of love from my heart and my soul and the divine. And then this idea dropped in to create a podcast for Starseed parents to teach them how to parent from their intuition. And I was like, I don't understand. I'm creating this meditation company and now I'm supposed to do this podcast. And how does this connect? And just recently, I connected the dots where with each podcast, a meditation drops in that is for these parents of the Starseed children. So most recently, I created this meditation where the Starseed children told me what their parents need and kind of giving them confidence. And then I created another one where parents can connect to their Starseed children's higher selves so that they can have that own connection and figure out what their child needs. So it's been a really beautiful bridging of two things I just love, which is parenting and meditation. But also, I now have this path of service that I always desired for parents and especially for mothers.
Thank you. Thank you for this, for sharing this. We find that hearing others' stories of this hero's journey that you go through, the turbulations of using your own, the hole that you were in to climbing out of that hole and seeing it as a gift for developing medicine that you can help somebody else with. The term starseed children, a lot of listeners might not be familiar. What does it mean to you? Because it's probably has a different meaning to everyone, right? What does it mean to you?
For me, a starseed child is someone who's lived more lives galactically, interdimensionally, on other planes than they have on Earth. It doesn't mean that they've only lived outside of Earth, but the majority of their lives have been in other dimensions. And more children are absolutely coming in who have never been to Earth before. So there's going to be that component too. But that's how I define starseed.
And what characteristics are you noticing in these children? Like, how are they different to someone, for example, a 15-year-old who was a child 12 years ago? So what are you noticing from a 3-year-old now versus before? Like, what are some of the characteristics that parents can watch out for?
I think across the board, starseed kids are highly sensitive, highly empathic. A lot of them have most of them probably have their intuitive gifts very much turned on, and they may kind of turn off as they get older. But I know for my children, my youngest, she's telepathic in a lot of ways. My oldest would see energies, and he's kind of shut that down. He remembered a lot of his past incarnations up until the age of 4. Is very intuitive, and she's very much out in the backyard talking to her guides and talking to the fairies and the interdimensional energies. So their intuitive gifts are just very much turned on, highly sensitive, highly empathic. And I said this in my first episode of the podcast, you're just going to notice they're a little bit different. So once they start being in groups with other children, you'll kind of start to pick out who the starseed kids are because they'll come together. They always gravitate towards each other. And they are the kids that are just like a little bit unique. Their frequency feels a little bit different. They're super high vibrational, and they often can kind of just like see beyond the veil, not just in terms of energy, but they can see beyond what people are giving them. So like they can see the truth of what people are feeling, or they'll see when things aren't matching up. Like they're very wise old souls. So those are some of the things. And then there are some other interesting aspects, like their eating patterns can be a little different. My kids could essentially live on liquids. And this is not across the board, but I believe it's because they need the codes from the food so quickly. They also need an excessive amount of fruit, sunlight, nature. They have to be in nature as much as possible. They they need a lot of movement. They just have so much energy flowing through them. They can't sit for really long periods of time typically. And then sleep patterns I've noticed are interesting as well. Sometimes they're not typically the kids that are on this like great schedule every single day. They're the kids who are going to have nightmares because they're traveling in their sleep. One of my children had night terrors, and sleep can just be erratic. Like I said, my oldest, he would see energies at night specifically. So some weird occurrences may be happening with them, but I believe all of this is just becoming more and more normal. So it won't be weird in maybe 10 years, but just things like that in general.
Okay, so two things you said that I want to touch on. One was you said they have all these gifts, they have all these abilities, and they may turn them off, they may shut them down. And I think we've talked about this before, where you felt like you had a lot of intuitive abilities when you were younger and shut them down. So as a parent of a child that is showing all of these gifts, all of these abilities, intuitive, sensitive abilities, how have you been navigating with your own kids, encouraging it instead of squashing it? Because I think our conditioning wants our kids to not feel different, to not be picked on at school, to not be viewed as the weirdo, right? And we may say something that would encourage them to hide it and squash it. So, how have you been navigating this?
I feel like there's two pieces to that. And one is we have to let our own ego go. What other people think of us or our children is none of our business. And I've been really trying to instill that in my children, because when you are empathic, you can feel what everyone's thinking and you want everyone to feel really comfortable, but that's not your job. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of that is just letting them know that they can tell you anything. Nothing's too weird. Nothing's quote abnormal. And just sharing my own stories, I think helps as well, because I am super intuitive and I'm very much in the spiritual world. And that's probably why they chose me. But like with my daughter, Kenzie, she'll be like, oh, grandpa's here. And we have this, my husband's grandfather, his energy will very much pop in. I can kind of like feel him in the corner of the room, and she'll talk to grandpa. And I'll just say, oh, what did he say? We just make it so normal. Or Hudson will say, I see your third eye, and he'll talk about the third eye. And he's in kindergarten, and at this age, everything's widely accepted. But I know it won't be that way with his friends indefinitely. And I said, not everyone can see each other's third eyes, and not everyone is even going to know what that is. Not everyone understands energy centers and chakras. So just know that going in, but let that be your truth. And as long as you're confident in it and you stand strong in what you believe, that energy, people will just say, okay, if you're confident. But if you're being kind of wishy-washy about it and people can sense the weakness, that's where more can come into play, in terms of like bullying and everything.
Yeah,
But
so
I
as
think making it normal as possible.
yeah, as a parent that may not have a strong connection of their own, I think it's so important to release any judgment and try to correct or try to say, how do you know this is true or whatever, like prove me, all of those things that come out from our own programming that can really create that doubt that you're speaking to. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that a lot of our spiritual abilities, a lot of the clairs, there's a very thin line between imagination and actually, like, there's almost no line, right? It's like it's all one. So encouraging that dialogue and making home feel safe, I think, as you mentioned, is so important. Normalizing it, because as we do it within our homes, we are planting the seeds for normalizing it collectively.
Yeah,
We are creating
absolutely.
that this is the norm, the new normal, and this is where we're going, because that's
Right.
truly where we're going. More and more of these children are going to be coming in. And it's really interesting. I've been noticing a lot of conscious women in the spiritual community getting pregnant, and many unexpectedly, and they're older and they're like, what is happening? And just knowing that, oh, there they are, they're coming. But also acknowledging that a lot of these children are coming into families where the parents are not conscious, and they may be seeking a diagnosis or some kind of treatment or medication or whatever. So I think it's important. Your work is so important in giving it a voice and normalizing and creating a resource for it. And also showing that these kids are here to be bridges between that spiritual world and our physical world, and we can make it easier for them or harder. That's you choose. You're going to make it easier for them, or make them have the difficult lessons that are not really necessary.
Right. And I feel like a lot of us, our generation, we didn't have parents who were at the consciousness that we're at now. And they were very much following the norm. And so we did stuff it down or turn it off, or we didn't, I was just speaking to this. If my big feelings were too much for one of my parents, I would get sent to my room. They just could not handle that type of like sensitivity and emotion. So eventually I was just stuffing it down. And then as I got older, I was numbing myself because I was like, okay, I'm too much. That's what I was taught by that action. So these kids need to know that we are this safe, soft space for them to land, and that nothing's too much and nothing's too wild or crazy. And we need their authenticity and their uniqueness. The world is dying for authenticity and uniqueness. And I feel like this generation is really going to bring that.
What is, if you could paint a vision and it were to come true, what would be your vision for Earth in, say, 10 years, 20 years, for this version of New Earth with these children and families? And
I guess
are we
my
telepathic?
vision,
Are we telepathic by then? Are we?
I mean, we very well could be. Me and my youngest Coco, we have a lot of telepathy. I'll have a song in my head and she'll just start singing it, and it'll be something I haven't heard in like 2 weeks. And we very much have that already. So I could see the more of us getting on the same frequency. My vision is really more that we are all living exactly the way we want to live. Because I was noticing this just last night. My husband was having a conversation with a friend's husband, and they were both kind of talking about how they were sort of over their job and it's become a grind, and they thought they wanted to get to this place in their company, and now they're just kind of over it. And I think a lot of people are feeling this way. Like, okay, we did everything we were supposed to do, right? To have this life, but it's not fully fulfilling me. So my dream would be that we drop all of this is what I should do, and we just follow our heart, and all of the abundance follows that. And we get to live these dream lives that we always wanted. And if that's living in like a really cool technological city, great, you do you. If that is living out on like a homestead in nature and having virtually no technology, great, you do that. So it's whatever it means to you. I hope that we can all just finally live that way and just drop all this conditioning. That would be my dream.
I was just at my son's school earlier today. They were having a science fair, and my son his project was on AI and how we can't tell the difference between what was written by human and what was written by ChatGPT. And I was speaking to his technology teacher about how the jobs are getting outsourced to AI and robots and all the things. And another mom joined in, and it was just this fear coming from her. And I could see her point, right? Like I could see like what's going to happen with all those jobs and all those things. And but then there's also that part of me that was like, actually, this is accelerating everything. Like this is pushing us to confront, if you lose your job to AI, what are my human gifts? What are my human gifts? And it's as if it's putting you in this corner, but you are confronted with, what does my human and the soul connection, what does that have to provide? Because AI can't replace that.
Yeah, and a lot of people might not be ready to go there yet, but I feel
No.
like a lot of people hit that in 2020, where it
Yeah.
was like, okay, everything's shut down. What do I actually want to do? Do I want to keep doing this job? Or
Mhm.
if they lost their job, a lot of people moved on, and that was such a huge wake-up call for many, many, many people.
Yeah.
So I, for one, would be excited if more people got pushed into
Yeah.
their soul's calling, because we
And I
all
think
came here
Diana Cooper
for
talks
that.
about how the robots and all the things in the golden age, new earth, that will be our reality. And it's really interesting to see that it's like it's coming to pass, it's coming to be our reality much quicker than we might have anticipated. And yeah, I completely agree with you that in some ways the lockdowns and the pandemic and all of that gave us the space, like it forced us into solitude, hibernation in some way. The water, like the womb, the where you were basically to reinvent yourself in some way. And before you came back out into society. And also we changed the way that we were seeing these collective and ourselves and just everything. For some of us, not for everyone. And
Yeah.
there is many waves of many versions of that are happening and that will keep happening as part of this great awakening, this great shakeup in some ways, right?
Mhm. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting decade, to be sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when you were the other thing I wanted to ask you, when you started talking about how meditation became your daily practice and how it became your salvation from postpartum depression, anxiety. And I know many people listening are, oh, I try to meditate, or just my thoughts, this and that. And your meditation style is very different. Can you speak to how that came to be and how you would describe it? And yeah.
Yeah, I think I played around with many different guided meditations to kind of see which one I was gravitating towards, because there are so many different types. Everyone can find something. But I do remember in the beginning, I mean, I would either my thoughts would be racing or I would just fall asleep. It was like I had to calibrate to meditation to really make it effective. But when I really got hooked, I think is when I sort of created this own meditation style for myself, where I do just a very brief amount of breath work to kind of drop me in. And that's always inhaling for 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and then exhaling for a longer amount of time, because that really slows everything down. That gets you into that theta brainwave state really quickly. So I would do that for maybe a minute or so. And then I would drop into my heart and I would say, okay, what am I grateful for today? And then that instantly raises your vibration. And then you're feeling pretty good. And you're like, okay, I can do this. And I really like to then drop my energy and connect down to Mother Earth, and then bring it back up and connect to God, Source, the divine, and then go into meditation from there. So For me, I usually went into it in the beginning with a specific, I'm a bit type A, so I would go into it with a reason. Like I would either have a question I wanted answered, or I would want to feel a certain way. I would want to feel more gratitude for my life, or I would want to feel more love for myself. And so I would go into it with that aspect, like, what do I want to accomplish today? Which I guess is a bit counterintuitive. But I've never been the person who's like, let me sit there in silence and think of nothing. To me, that's just, it's really, really difficult. And it made my mind race more. So I always went into it with an idea of what I wanted to do. And then eventually I cleared out so much density and just so much muddiness and cloudiness. I would always journal afterwards. That then I started connecting to my soul, and I would be getting these messages, and I would just get this like feeling of love. And then it became completely addicting because I'm like, what does my soul want to tell me today? This is exciting. And you would just leave feeling, I would leave feeling like I got 10 hours of rest. I could get through the rest of my day and just in such a good mood. And so every day, this is still what I do. My youngest takes a nap for 1 hour, and my older two do quiet time. And so I time it. And I go in my little meditation room here and I meditate every day at the same time of day. And that was a big one for me. Every day, same time of day. It's like my office hours. And then I would put on in the beginning the same music every single time. So it was like that combination of starting my meditation the same way, same music, same time, my body would just start to drop in really, really fast. And then over time, you can kind of switch it up. But that was what really worked for me, was kind of like having a reason and then doing it the same way.
My story with meditation is actually really similar. When COVID hit, I started the meditation teacher training. I think it was that April, and kids would get on Zoom, and I would go outside, and I would sit outside, and I would, part of the meditation teacher training, we had to listen to the same, we had to meditate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. So it was forced, right? In some ways. But it was, you had to choose between the 4 different styles of meditation. And my preferred was metta. I would always do the loving kindness meditation. And that was me for like a month straight. And then it became a habit. And like exactly like you said, I too became addicted. And for me too, it started, I would finish the meditation and I would, before I would even open my eyes, all of this information was coming through, and I would get my phone and I would feverishly type whatever was coming through. And it was just the most beautiful things. I could never write them myself. And when people say, well, how do I start channeling? How do I connect? That's how. That's literally how. And the lesson from our stories is you have to pick what works for you. And if I had picked, for example, Zen breath, where you're counting your breath, or alternating nostrils or whatever, I would not have lasted. I had to try different things before I found what works for me. And the type that you describe is also exactly the same style as I enjoy, setting that intention and asking whatever experience we're meant to have it. And like you, it always comes through with these like interesting things, and it's like, oh, I need to share this. And yeah, it's really, and it's also the heart. You do the gratitude thing, I do the mixed love tape activation. It activates the heart, which I believe is this, it's portal to source, to the divine. And it's from there that all of that stuff starts unlocking and coming through. Do you feel that too? Or do you feel like it comes in more from through the crown into the headspace more? Does it come from the heart? I always wonder how people, if different people feel it differently.
I feel like, to your point, it opens my heart. Like I can feel it kind of opening and softening after I do the gratitude. But then everything is coming in through my crown and down. And my thing is, I really have to work to pull it all the way through my body because I can get very up here in my head and get a little like dizzy and spacey afterwards. So
Mhm.
it's really like pulling all of the information all the way down to my feet into the earth. So that's
Mhm.
why I always ground beforehand too.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, I have no idea how many different types of meditation I tried. I would just, Google search like self-love meditation or gratitude meditation. And then I just kind of eventually I formed my own style based off of that once I had kind of picked and chosen.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I tried a lot of them. And the funny thing is about 3 or 4 years before I got really, really serious and actually went to get trained as a meditation teacher, I went to see a psychic who told me, "Why are you here? You're so clairvoyant, you're so clairaudient, you're so this and that. You just need to meditate." And I was like, ugh, really? Really? And she gave me some links on YouTube and I tried it and it didn't really, it didn't do didn't do what it was meant to. And it was really 2020 in March when my it actually started with me waking up in the middle of the night, like hearing a voice and saying, "You're here to guide others to do this, and you're going to be talking about mindfulness and meditation." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Wait, what? But it's we test it on ourselves and we find our way. And I think you and I are excellent examples of pivoting and learning to flow with this journey wherever it may it may lead us. And yeah, and allowing the pace of our family life, that rhythm, to not fully dictate of how and where it goes, but play a big role in it. Because so often as spiritual entrepreneurs, we try to steer too hard or push it or lead from the mind that has ideas. And here we are with these super sensitive children who need us to be, more than anything, examples of how to live from the heart, how to lead, how to parent from the heart, how to live fully integrating that spiritual side and in this crazy human world.
Yeah. Yeah, they very, very carefully chose us for very specific reasons. And I do believe that the most of the star seeds that are coming in, they want a different experience than a lot of us had. I think a lot of our generation are the ancestral healers for one or more lines in our family, and that was part of our mission. I don't feel that at all with these star seeds. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but I feel like in general, they do want the more conscious parent or the parent that maybe isn't now, but they will have an awakening at some point down the line, and they will be willing to do things differently and not follow the norm, which we're creating the new norm.
Yeah. I also heard when you said that, I almost watched that the children are going, like, I got this visual that this little girl is coming to her dad and grabbing his hand, and he has a spiritual awakening. And she's like, "I'm going to help you walk this path. Like, we're going to navigate it together." And what you said about our generation, ancestral healing, clearing those lines, yes, so that they don't have to, so that it's clear because they have a different, greater mission as this tribe coming in. And we had to do the heavy lifting, we had to do the bulldozering. And they're coming in and bringing in a new frequency, a new wave of light that is
Mhm.
much, much welcome, much needed.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you recommend to somebody who is really struggling to understand their child, who is talking about having any form of spiritual experiences, who might be getting scared from the night terrors, who is, and a parent just can't connect? Like, what would you, I could just feel the energy of this mother who is, "I have this child that Lyndsey's talking about." What resource can you, I know your podcast is going to be an amazing resource. But is there anything you could share with a mother who's really, how do I even relate to that? Like that seems to me like that's what I'm hearing. How do you relate? Because there's that consciousness and frequency divide, right?
Right. Hmm. I mean, I feel like there's a few components to this. So, something that really helped me when my firstborn was maybe a year old and he was just having these epic tantrums. I mean, he would wake up every day from his nap and just scream for an hour. And my nervous system was just on fire. And I was like, something's wrong. I truly was like, is something wrong with him? Now I know, no, he's just a super empath. But I was reading about highly sensitive people. I feel like that could be a good first step is there are books about HSPs that are really helpful. There are people who are devoted to just handling children's feelings. Like I know there's this account that I really like called Big Little Feelings on Instagram. I know they've helped some of my friends with that. So there's all kinds of resources out there if you're willing to look. I also think a huge piece of this is like reparenting ourselves and doing the work on ourselves because it can make your nervous system go haywire. It very well may do that. So we need to take care of ourselves. We need space. We need self-care, do yoga, meditation, breath work, take a walk in nature, take a bath, whatever it is. Do, if you don't have money for a babysitter, do a swap with another family, like every other week. Something where you can get time alone and refresh yourself is so important with these children because it can be a lot. I think the other piece of this, if people are open to it, is for me, energy healing was a massive, massive help in all of this because it helped me with my own boundaries, but it's helped me a lot with my kids' boundaries. So we work a lot with Archangel Michael. If anyone's ever scared at night, you can call Archangel Michael and he will be right by your side. Each of my kids have little Archangel Michael coins next to their bed, just as a little reminder. And call your angels. We can always put a bubble of protection around ourselves. There's all kinds of things you can do. And once you dive into energy healing, you kind of learn all this. But those are just the basics. I also think teaching your children just like any sort of boundary work, like what you're feeling is not always yours. In fact, it's often not yours. So teaching them that at the end of the day, they can say something like, I release any energy I picked up that is not mine. I call back all my power to me now. Give them a bath with Epsom salt. I mean, there are things you can do for their self-care and your self-care that I think will make a huge difference. But I think a big part of this is reparenting yourself and just doing the work there. That was, at least for me, that was a huge, huge part of it.
And it ties into that piece of the girl picking up her dad's hand and saying, we're going to do this together. That a lot of the time these children are coming in as an invitation for us to really get, like, look in the mirror, do the work, and also to commit fully, because there is no more numbing, there's no more autopilot with these little humans that picked us as parents. Yeah, I second what you said about Archangel Michael, about prayers of protection before going to bed, teaching kids the boundaries, sovereignty, and releasing back to source all that is not theirs. I wish someone taught me that when I was younger.
But I
Because
always say, I know.
we're like sponges for other people's energy, and it's yeah, it's, if you're sensitive, the world can feel so heavy. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to add to all of that was call in your tribe, call in others who are in the same, who are experiencing something similar, other parents of little starseed children. And one of the things that my son, he's 11 now, and he's very much like you described. One of the things we always talk about that he actually told me, he said, I'm not for everyone. Not everyone is for me. I just need like that one friend. And as parents, we worry like,
Sounds like you.
will they fit in? Will they? And he's like, I just need that one friend, that like my person. And I'm like, yes, we all need just that one person. And when they find that one person, like they're good. They don't need a whole football team of friends and all of that. And a lot of them are not interested in competition. Some are, but a lot of them are coming in with the codes of co-creating the new world instead of competing. And pushing them into sports is to them is like, wait, why do we have to, why does somebody have to be better than somebody else? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, Lyndsey, this has been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you on what is your website? What is your Instagram? And all of this will also be in the show notes, but if you could just share, and how can someone work with you if you're accepting clients, and yes, all that, all the good stuff.
You can find me at themeditationmama.com and you can send me a message on there. In fact, I very much welcome it. You can find my podcast coming out, I believe it's July 9th. It'll be on all the major podcast platforms, the Starseed Parenting Podcast. And if you'd like to see me on YouTube, I just started a YouTube. It's youtube.com/at the meditation mama. And you can find me on Instagram at _meditation mama. And again, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. My goal ultimately is to create a Starseed parenting community. And so let me know if you're interested in that, and we can start sooner than later. And then all of my meditations are always being updated on my website. I'm also going to have a bonus meditation, like I said, with every episode of my podcast for free. And you can also find me on Substack if you'd like to listen to my random writings. I include a lot of my channeled information from my journal on there because I feel like it needs to be heard, and that feels like a good place.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm not doing any client work at the moment, but there is the thought of potentially doing personalized meditations. And I have done that for companies before, if that's something you're interested in.
Amazing. Amazing. And Lyndsey and I have talked about one day soon, hopefully, to do in-person events and gatherings and maybe even camp outs or glamp outs or whatever it is, to gather families together, children together, and connect the tribes, connect the lineages. And yeah, there's so much magic to be woven if we could just begin to open ourselves up to it, and allowing our children to lead in opening us more to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lyndsey. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. And until next time.